In learning how to manage problem lists in Meditech, it's important to know that there are 4 different ways you can access the patient's problem list. You can access the patient's problem list by looking in the Assessment and Plan section of many different PDOC documents. You can access the patient's problem list by going through the discharge routine. You can access a patient's problem list by entering into an admit to inpatient order. This order has a special field designed to allow you to put in the admission diagnosis specifically or manage other problem lists. Or you can access the patient's problem list by simply clicking on the button Problem List in the status board in the Enterprise Medical Record. By doing so, we're brought to the Manage Patient Problems desktop. This patient currently has no problems. To add problems to the problem list, we click on Add Problems. This takes us to the Add Patient Problems desktop. At the top we see an area here where we can list out the problems. We have 3 buttons: Favorites, Problems, ICD code. Favorites is currently grayed out because we don't have any listed. It defaults to Problems. If we want to search by way of ICD codes, we can do so. There's a search box. We type out part of the word of the diagnosis we're looking for. In this case, I'm looking for hypertension. You'll see that the search function lists any diagnosis that has the word hypertension included. I'll click simply on hypertension for this example. When we click on the diagnosis, we notice 2 things. 1, the diagnosis is added to the problem list above, and 2, the Add to Favorites button is lit up. If this is a diagnosis that you make a lot, you may want to add this to your favorites list to speed up your workflow. I'll do so at this time. Now, we'll notice here where the diagnosis is listed, we have a few things to the right. The first is the list columns. We'll notice that it defaulted to active and medical. I'll click on this and we have a few choices. We can make this an active problem, or we can list it as a problem that's occurred in the past. We can also say whether this problem is a medical problem, a surgical problem, or a problem related to the patient's social history. I'm going to leave them in their default position. The next column is the status. It's currently defaulted to acute, but I could make it a chronic problem, hypertension often is, or I could list it as a resolved problem, but one which I might want to keep on the list to help me better manage this patient. I'll hit OK. If I want this problem to show up during the current hospital visit, I'll click this button. The onset time of the problem can be listed in 3 different ways. We can put an exact date, we can put an approximate date, or we can say that the date is unknown. You can free text the date in the box above, or you can use the calendar function to assign that date. The next column is the ICD code for this particular diagnosis, and then the final column is a permanent comments field. It's important to note that these comments are permanent. Once you've applied a comment to a problem for the patient, it'll stay with the patient after that time. You cannot edit other people's comments, and for your own, you can add addendums. At any point, if you decide that you do not like what you've put in the problem list, you can re-edit the list. You can also cancel out, and that'll erase all work you've done on the problem list. I'm going to choose 2 more problems to show further function. In this case, I'll type in liver, and I'll choose liver abscess. And then I'll type one more time, renal calc, to show that the search function is finding renal calculus or stone, and I'll add that to the patient's problem list as well. Once I've found all the problems that I need for my patient, I'm going to click OK. And this takes me back to the Manage Patient Problems desktop. You'll notice now that the problems are listed here. There's a few things that you can do from this field. One is you can change the order of these problems, which is often helpful depending on how you want to prioritize the care of your patient. To do so, you might click on the diagnosis and use these down and up arrows to move its position relative to the other diagnoses. You can also further edit the information about this problem through the same columns as we discussed before. You can also add these problems to your My Problems list. By doing so, then you can view problems only by My Problems. Sometimes the patient may have many problems for which other specialists are taking care of the patient, but you might just want to see those ones that you have concerns for. This concludes the video demonstration on how to manage problem lists.